Garrett Wynn blocked the parking lot exit 6-2, jersey number 7. The whole school behind him. He looked at Mia and said it loud enough for everyone to hear, "You don't belong here." "You never will." Mia didn't move. "Didn't look away," she said quietly. "My father's going to disagree with you." Garrett laughed. His crew laughed. None of them knew what was parked 2 blocks away, a 19-year-old Harley. Ridden by a 59-year-old man with grease on his hands, silver ring engraved with his dead wife's name, and 30 years of history that the most powerful man in this town had spent months trying to bury. Bo Hargrove knew that history. That's exactly why he was afraid. Because Ray Calloway hadn't come to Greystone Falls to cause trouble. He came to stay. And the men who scare people into leaving have never once dealt with a man who simply refuses. This is their story. The sun wasn't fully up yet. Just a thin line of orange along the edge of the Tennessee hills. The kind of light that doesn't quite commit. Like it's still deciding whether the day is worth it. Ray Calloway had been riding since 3 in the morning. Not because he couldn't sleep. He could sleep fine these days. He rode because some decisions need to be made in the dark before the noise of the world talks you out of them. The Harley hummed beneath him. Steady. Familiar. The way an old dog walks beside you. Not performing loyalty, just being it. He'd had this bike for 19 years. Longer than most things in his life had lasted. His hands on the handlebars were not young hands. Thick knuckles. A scar along the left thumb from a crankshaft job gone wrong in 2007. Grease that never fully washed out from under the fingernails, no matter how hard he scrubbed. On his right hand, on the ring finger, a silver band, plain. Worn thin on the inside, engraved with one word, Linda. He didn't look at it while he rode. He didn't need to. He could feel it. Behind him, about a quarter-mile back, a silver Ford pickup followed at a respectful distance. Inside, Mia was asleep in the passenger seat. She'd curled herself against the window the way she'd done since she was small. Knees up, one arm tucked under her chin, the other wrapped around her backpack like it might run off without her. Ray had checked on her twice at gas stations. Time he'd looked through the glass and seen her sleeping, something in his chest had done a thing he couldn't quite name. Not grief, not exactly, more like awareness. The awareness that this person existed because of him, and that she'd survived in spite of a lot of things he'd put her through, and that she was, against all reasonable odds, still giving him a chance. That was Mia, 17 years old, and still giving her old man a chance. The sign for Greystone Falls appeared at 6:42 in the morning. Population, 4,200. Established 1887, Ray slowed the Harley. He'd been through 100 towns like this one. Maybe more. He knew the grammar of small American towns. The water tower with the high school mascot painted on it. The diner that had been there since before anyone could remember. The Methodist church on the corner. The hardware store that somehow survived every economic shift of the last 50 years. Greystone Falls had all of it. The main street was called, inevitably, Main Street. 2 blocks of storefronts, clean enough, with American flags hung between the street lamps. A barber shop, a pharmacy, a bank that had the word first in its name, the way banks always did in towns like this, and across from the barber shop, just waking up, lights flickering on inside, a Diner Dots place. The sign was hand-painted, the kind of sign that tells you the owner made it themselves. Ray parked the Harley in front of it. Turned off the engine. The quiet rushed in the way it always did when you killed a motorcycle. Sudden, almost startling, like the world had been holding its breath. He sat there for a moment, just sat. His phone buzzed in his jacket pocket. He pulled it out. Unknown number. Tennessee area code, but not local. Nashville, maybe. He looked at it for 4 seconds. Then he turned the screen down and slid it back into his pocket. Not now. Whatever it was. Not now. The pickup pulled in beside him. The engine cut. Ray heard the passenger door open, heard the familiar shuffle of Mia getting her bearings after a long sleep. She came around the front of the truck, hair still half-tangled from leaning against the window. She had her mother's eyes. He'd never quite gotten used to that. Seeing Linda's eyes in this teenage face, blinking at him in the early morning light. She looked at the town. Took it in slowly, the way she always assessed new places. Quiet, methodical, like she was making a list she'd consult later. It's smaller than Memphis, she said. Most things are. She looked at the diner, then at the barber shop, then at the water tower, where a painted hawk spread its wings above the words Greystone Falls Hawks. Hawks, she said. Apparently she was quiet for a moment. Then, cheerleaders for the Hawks? I'd guess so. She nodded slowly. Processing, Ray watched her. He wanted to say something useful. Something a father was supposed to say when he moved his daughter to her 5th town in 6 years. What he said was, "You hungry?" Mia looked at him. One side of her mouth lifted. Always, she said. Side Dot's place. The smell was coffee and bacon grease and something baking, biscuits maybe, or cornbread. The kind of smell that doesn't apologize for itself. 4 people were already seated. A couple of older men at the counter, not talking to each other but comfortable in the silence. A woman in a postal uniform reading her phone. A man in work boots with mud on them, staring at his eggs like they'd said something offensive. The woman behind the counter was somewhere in her mid-60s, big framed glasses. Gray hair swept up in a practical bun, an apron with a faded rooster on it. She moved between the coffee station and the counter with the ease of someone who had done this particular sequence of movements 10,000 times. She looked up when Ray and Mia came in, didn't miss a beat, didn't stare at the leather jacket, just said, "2 of you?" "2 of us," Ray said. "Corner booth's got the best light in the morning. Take it if you want." They took it. Ray ordered black coffee and eggs over easy. Mia ordered orange juice and a short stack with extra butter, the way she'd ordered pancakes since she was 9 years old. The woman, Ray assumed she was Dot, because the apron had the same rooster as the sign out front, brought the drinks herself, set them down with practiced efficiency. Then she looked at Ray, not with alarm, not with suspicion, just looked. "You're the one opening up the Callaway garage," she said. It wasn't a question. Ray raised an eyebrow. Word travels in Greystone Falls. Word doesn't travel, it teleports. She refilled the coffee for the men at the counter without looking. "I heard you were coming in about a week ago. Charlie Briggs mentioned it at the hardware store." Charlie Briggs, sheriff's husband, he fixes things. Not the law kind of fixing, the actual kind. Plumbing mostly. She wiped the counter. "You were in Memphis?" "Yeah, long drive. We took it slow." Dot glanced at Mia, who was putting an unreasonable amount of butter on her pancakes and didn't seem to notice she was being observed. "Your daughter?" Dot asked. "Yeah, she's starting at Greystone Falls High?" "Monday." Dot nodded. Something crossed her face. Not concern exactly. More like the look of someone who knows a thing but is deciding whether it's their business to share it. She decided it wasn't. "Not yet. Biscuits come out in about 10 minutes, she said. "I'll bring some over." She went back to the counter. Ray watched her go. 35 years of reading people had given him a sense for the ones who had things behind their eyes. Information they'd held on to long enough it had become part of them. Dot Fitch had things behind her eyes. Filed that away. Maya ate her pancakes and looked out the window at Main Street, waking up. A delivery truck. An old man walking a basset hound. A teenage boy on a bicycle, backpack on, moving like he had somewhere to be but wasn't happy about it. "Daddy," she said. Is this the one?" "The one what?" "The one we stay in," she said it simply. No accusation in it, just the question. "I need to know if it's worth unpacking the boxes this time or if I should just live out of them again." Ray set down his coffee cup. He thought about the 14 boxes in the back of the pickup. Most of them were Mia's books, the small collection of trophies from the gymnastics she'd done until she was 12, framed photo of Linda at the Grand Canyon they'd taken when Mia was 6, Linda's hair blown sideways by the wind, laughing with her whole face. He thought about the lease he'd signed on the garage. 3 years. Thought about the fact that he was 59 years old and tired in ways that sleep didn't fix. "Unpack the boxes," he said. Maya looked at him for a long moment. "Okay," she said, and went back to her pancakes. It was the most important conversation they would have that morning, and neither of them made a big deal out of it. That was the Callaway way. The garage was on Birch Street. 2 blocks east of Main, it had been sitting empty for 3 years. The previous owner, a man named Hector Pruitt, who Ray had never met, had run it for 22 years before his knees gave out. The building was solid, good bones. The kind of construction from the 1960s that didn't care about looking pretty, but cared deeply about not falling down. The sign above the bay door said Callaway Auto Now. Ray had put it up himself on his first visit to town, 3 weeks prior, just the name. No tagline, no phone number on the sign, no promise of honest work and fair prices the way a lot of shops advertised. He figured if the work was honest and the prices were fair, people would say so. And if they didn't, no sign was going to fix it. He spent the first 2 days getting the space organized. It was work he understood down to the bone. The arrangement of tools, the way the light fell through the bay doors in the afternoon, the placement of the hydraulic lift, the small refrigerator in the corner that would hold water in summer, and on certain evenings, 2 bottles of beer. There was a radio. He set it to a country station that played older stuff. Cash, Haggard, Waylon Jennings. Music with dust on it. Music that had lived a life. He didn't think about Memphis. He didn't think about the years before Memphis. He just worked. Maya came by after school on the second day, and sat on a stool near the door, doing homework and occasionally passing him a wrench without being asked. She'd grown up in garages. She knew their language. Coach Birch says I can come to practice Thursday, she said, not looking up from her notebook. That the cheer coach? Yeah, good. She seems okay. Mia paused. Like actually okay. Not fake okay, high bar, Ray said. I've met a lot of fake okay, Mia said simply. He couldn't argue with that. On the third morning, while Ray was doing inventory on the tool chest, his phone rang again. Same unknown number. This time he answered, Ray Calloway. The voice on the other end was familiar in the way that old scars are familiar. You stop noticing them until something presses on them. Ghost, Ray said, a pause. Then, you know, most people say hello first. Most people don't call me 14 times without leaving a message. Another pause. Longer this time. Ray heard road noise in the background. This was a man calling from a moving vehicle, which meant he didn't want the call traced to a fixed location. That told Ray something. I need to see you, Ghost said. You know where I am. That's the problem, Ray, Ghost's voice dropped. Someone else knows where you are too, and they knew before you told anyone. The radio played on. Merle Haggard. The fight inside of me, how long? Ray asked. Few weeks, maybe more. Who? Someone in a nice suit who drives a car with county plates. I've been asking around. A beat. Name Hargrove mean anything to you? Ray said nothing for a moment. Bo Hargrove. He said, you know him? I know the name. Ray set down the wrench he'd been holding. I didn't think he knew mine. Well, Ghost said. He does now. That evening, Ray drove out to the edge of town. There was a pull-off on County Road 7, overlooking a small valley where the last light of the day gathered like water in a low place. He parked the Harley and sat. He pulled from his inside jacket pocket an envelope he kept there always, not because he needed to look at what was inside, because its weight reminded him of something. Inside the envelope was a photograph, old color faded to something between gold and gray. Taken in the fall of 1999, at a gathering outside Knoxville that Ray could still remember with the kind of clarity you reserve for things that had changed the shape of your life. In the photograph, Ray at 34, younger and harder looking, standing with several other men near a row of motorcycles. Ghost was there. Two others whose names Ray wouldn't say out loud even alone. The gathering had been about club business, territory, money, the usual. But at the edge of the photograph, slightly out of focus, stood a man who didn't belong young. Late 20s, maybe 30, wearing a blazer over an open collar shirt. Not a biker. Not law enforcement either. Ray had learned to spot both by then. This man had the look of someone who was buying something and trying not to appear interested. He'd been brought to that gathering by a man named Darnell Cooper, a loose connection of the club, the kind of guy who existed in the margins between legitimate business and the other kind. Cooper had told them the man in the blazer was a political consultant who needed some information about a competitor. The club didn't typically do that kind of work, but Darnell had vouched, and the money was substantial. Ray had been against it. He remembered that clearly. He'd said his piece and been outvoted. The information changed hands. The man in the blazer took it and left. Ray had forgotten about him by the following spring. He was looking at the photograph now, squinting at the blurred figure at the edge of the frame. He had never been sure, not completely, but the build was right. The posture. The way the man held himself slightly apart from everything, like he was already calculating an exit. Bo Hargrove. Ray put the photograph back in the envelope. Put the envelope back in his jacket. He sat for a while, longer, looking at the valley. He didn't know yet what Hargrove wanted, but he understood, in the way that men who have lived a certain kind of life understand things, that when someone from your past starts asking questions about you before you've even arrived somewhere, they're not asking out of curiosity. They're afraid of something, and afraid men with power were the most dangerous kind. He didn't tell Mia any of this. That night, she made spaghetti. The only meal she cooked with genuine confidence, and they ate at the kitchen table of the rented house on Maple Drive and talked about what she'd seen of the town. She liked the library. She liked that there was a coffee shop that wasn't a chain. She was undecided about the town in general. She'd learned to be slow with her assessments after moving so many times. Daddy, she said at some point, twirling pasta around her fork. What happened to your hands? She was looking at the scarring on his left knuckle. Not the crankshaft scar, the other one. Older, work, which kind of work? He looked at her. She held his gaze steadily. 17, her mother's eyes. Waiting, the kind I don't do anymore, he said. She held the look a moment longer, then nodded and went back to her pasta. That was Mia. She knew which doors to open and which to leave alone. She'd learned that the hard way too. They did the dishes together the way they always had, Ray washing, Mia drying, the radio on low. A comfortable silence that had taken years to become comfortable. Later, after she'd gone to bed, Ray sat at the kitchen table with a glass of water and thought about Bo Hargrove, and about how some things follow you, not because you let them, just because that's what they do. Monday came. Maya got up early. She didn't make a production of it. No anxiety spiral, no outfit crisis, no speech about how she didn't want to go. She'd done first days too many times for any of that. She just got up, showered, made toast, put on jeans and a dark green top that Ray thought looked like her mother's favorite color. She came to the kitchen door with her backpack on and said, "I'm ready." They drove to the school in the pickup. Greystone Falls High was on the north end of town, a long, low building in the functional style of schools built in the 1970s, when the priority was space over aesthetics. The lawn was well kept. The parking lot was filling up. A banner hung across the entrance, Greystone Falls Hawks, State Football Champions 2022, and below it, newer, still bright, District Champions 2023. Ray pulled up to the drop-off lane. Maya sat for a moment, looking at the building. "Want me to go in with you?" Ray asked. She gave him a sideways look, the look that said, "Dad, no, right," he said. She opened the door. Then she stopped. "Turn back, it'll be okay," she said. To him, not to herself. He understood that. She was reassuring him, telling him not to worry. He nodded. She got out, shouldered her backpack, walked toward the entrance without looking back. She had Linda's walk too, that particular kind of forward motion that said, "I know where I'm going, even when I don't." Ray sat in the drop-off lane a moment longer than he needed to. Then he drove to the garage. Inside the school, Thea found the main office without asking for directions. She'd learned to read the architecture of school buildings the way Ray read roads, patterns repeated everywhere. She got her schedule, her locker, a map she didn't need, the woman at the desk, a small, energetic woman named Mrs. Pellegrino who had the manner of someone who had welcomed 10,000 new students and intended to welcome 10,000 more. Told her Coach Birch ran tryouts and open practice on Thursday afternoons. Told her the cheerleading squad had placed second at regionals last year and were very competitive. "Thank you," Mia said. "The kids here are friendly," Mrs. Pellegrino said, "in the way that people in small towns say things they want to be true." Mia smiled and said nothing. The first half of the day was ordinary. Two of her teachers were good, the kind who actually taught rather than performed teaching. One was indifferent. One was clearly counting down the years to retirement. He found all of this within the first hour of each class. The architecture of classrooms, like the architecture of buildings, revealed itself quickly once you knew how to look. She ate lunch in the cafeteria. Chose a table near the window, not too isolated but not in the thick of things. A comfortable margin. She was reading when she heard it, not directed at her, but not yet. Just overheard, "Who's the new girl 2 tables away?" A group of boys, football players by their size and the way they occupied their space in the cafeteria. The easy ownership of boys who had been told since they were 12 that they were important. Maya didn't look up. "Transferred from Memphis, I think," another voice said. "Coach Birch said she's coming to Thursday practice." Huh. A pause. "She any good?" "Don't know." Then a third voice, different in quality from the others. Quieter, actually, which made it carry further, which Mia thought was either strategic or just natural to him. "Doesn't matter if she's good," the third voice said. "She's not from here." Something in the phrasing of it, not hostile exactly. More like establishing a fact, setting a boundary before anyone had asked to cross it. Maya turned the page of her book. She'd heard that particular kind of voice before. Knew what it meant. Filed it away in the notebook of her mind under things to understand before you respond to. After lunch, in the hallway outside the gymnasium, she saw him. She knew it was him before she knew how she knew. He was tall, 6'2", maybe 6'3", broad-shouldered in the way that was real, not performed. He wore a Greystone Falls Hawks jersey, number 7, over a gray long-sleeve shirt. His hair was dark, cut short. His face was the kind of face that photographed well, which in Ray's experience often meant it was very good at looking like things it wasn't. He was talking to 2 other boys, laughing at something. Easy, effortless laugh. On his left forearm, visible below the jersey sleeve, there was a scar. Long, old. He noticed Mia before she looked away. That happened. Their eyes met for maybe 2 seconds. His expression didn't change. He just looked at her, with the particular assessment that said, "I see you, deciding what you are." Then he went back to his conversation. Maya walked on. She thought, "That's Garrett Wynn. I don't know his name yet, but that's the one I need to understand." She was right. She met Coach Birch at the end of the day. Renata Birch was 48. close-cropped dark hair going silver at the temples, a whistle around her neck she never actually blew unnecessarily, and eyes that moved quickly and saw more than they let on. She met Mia in the gym hallway and shook her hand the way adults shook hands with each other, not the modified, condescending version adults gave teenagers. "Mrs. Pellegrino said you want to try out," Birch said. "Yes, ma'am, Thursday at 4. It's not tryouts. It's open practice. I'll watch." "No pressure, thank you." Birch looked at her for a moment. "You done this before?" "Not official cheer. Gymnastics until I was 12. Birch nodded, said nothing for a moment. Then, "How many schools is this for you?" Mia thought about it. 5th. Something moved through Birch's expression, not pity. "More like recognition. You know how to work hard," Birch said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, ma'am. Thursday at 4. Don't be late." "I hate late." "I won't be late," Mia said. And she wouldn't. That was the thing about Mia Calloway. She didn't say things she didn't mean. It was the trait she'd inherited from Ray, though neither of them would have named it as inheritance. It just was. She was almost at the front entrance when Garrett Wynn stepped out from the side hallway, not blocking her path. Just appearing, timing that could have been coincidence. Probably wasn't. He was with one other person this time, a boy named, she would later learn, Marcus Webb, a running back, second string, who seemed to exist primarily as an audience for Garrett. Garrett looked at Mia with the same even expression as before. "You're in Coach Birch's class today?" he asked. "I have a meeting with Coach Birch," Mia said. Calm, precise. "I already had it. You trying out for cheer?" "Open practice Thursday." "Yes." He looked at her for a moment. Something about the look wasn't aggressive. It was more like sizing up. Like he was measuring something. "It's a competitive team," he said. "Good." Mia said that seemed to catch him slightly off balance. He'd expected something else. Nervousness, maybe, or enthusiasm that he could deflate. "It's been the same group for a while," he said. "They don't usually take people in mid-year. Coach Birch invited me to open practice," Mia said. "So I'm going to go to open practice." She held his gaze for exactly as long as felt right. Not challenging, just steady. Then she said, "Have a good afternoon," and walked out the front door. She heard Marcus say something behind her, something she didn't catch. Heard Garrett say nothing in return. She walked to the pickup truck where Ray was waiting, got in, put on her seatbelt. "How was it?" Ray asked. "Educational," she said. Ray glanced at her, something in her face that she wasn't saying out loud. He'd always been able to do that. "Good educational or bad educational?" he asked. "Both," she said. He nodded and pulled out of the lot. 3 days into that first week, Ray developed a habit, 6:30 every morning. Dot's place, 1 cup of coffee, black, sometimes eggs. Always the corner booth. He didn't plan it as a habit. Became one the way habits usually do, through repetition that solves something. In this case, what it solved was the hour between waking up and the time the garage opened, when he had nothing useful to do, and his mind would otherwise fill the space with things that weren't useful, either. Dot Fitch was there every morning. She moved through the diner the way good people move through the spaces spent decades in, with an ease that looked effortless but was actually the product of 10,000 repeated choices, each one slightly refined from the last. She was 64 years old, had run Dot's place for 31 of those years. Before that, she'd worked in the diner when it was her mother's, which meant she'd been inside these walls, on and off, for most of her life. She knew this town the way you know a person you've lived with for 40 years. The habits, the patterns, the things said and the things carefully unsaid. The conversation happened gradually, not all at once. Not the way it does in movies, where two people sit down and immediately begin exchanging meaningful information. Real conversation, the kind that mattered, came in pieces. A thing said on Tuesday, a thing responded to on Wednesday, a thread picked up on Friday that had been set down on Monday. By the end of the first week, Ray understood several things about Dot Fitch. She had been married for 21 years to a man named Gerald, who had died 9 years ago. A car accident, officially, on a road Gerald drove every day, a road he knew like his own kitchen, a road he had never in 21 years of driving it had any trouble on. She did not believe it was an accident. She had not said this to Ray directly. She'd said it in the way people say the true things, sideways, while talking about something else. She'd mentioned Gerald while pouring coffee, mentioned the road, mentioned the year, and then she'd said carefully that some things in Greystone Falls didn't have clean explanations. Ray had heard that. He was the kind of man who heard the things people said between the lines. He asked about Bo Hargrove on Thursday morning. Not directly. He'd asked about town council, about who ran things, about what the political architecture of Greystone Falls looked like, underneath the flags on Main Street. Had set down his coffee cup. Looked at him. "Why are you asking?" she said. "Curious," he said. She looked at him a moment longer. She was a woman who had developed over 40 years of running a diner and listening to everything that happened in a small town, a very finely calibrated sense of when someone was casually curious and when they were asking because they needed to know. She understood that Ray needed to know. Bo Hargrove, she said, has been on the county council for 12 years. He came from money. His family owned farmland east of here, sold it for development money in the 90s, got rich. He presents himself as a man of the people. He's good at it. She wiped the counter. Slow, deliberate. In 12 years, she said, 4 businesses that publicly disagreed with his proposals lost their licenses or their leases. 2 families were forced to sell properties that Hargrove-connected developers bought the following year. One man who ran against him for a council seat in 2018, a decent man named Earl Fletcher, had an investigation opened into his contracting business 2 weeks before the election. Ray said, "Was the investigation legitimate?" "The investigation went nowhere," Dot said. Fletcher withdrew from the race. Moved to Chattanooga. She paused. "His business is doing fine now, by the way." "Different county." Ray turned his coffee cup in his hands. "Hargrove's boy," he said. "Garrett Wynn." Dot's eyes sharpened slightly. "That's not Hargrove's son," she said. "Garrett's mother married Hargrove when Garrett was 9 years old. Garrett's father left before he started school." She paused. "Garrett took his mother's maiden name." "Not Hargrove. What's the relationship like?" Dot was quiet for a moment. "I've watched that boy in here since he was small," she said. "He comes in on Sunday mornings sometimes with his mother. When Hargrove's not here, he's a different person, quieter. He actually listens when his mother talks. He holds the door for people." She picked up the coffee pot, moved away down the counter. Then she came back. "When Hargrove's here," she said, "Garrett performs. You can see it. He performs being a certain kind of person, the kind Hargrove wants him to be, and he's good at it because he's been doing it since he was 9 years old." She looked at Ray. "I'm not saying it excuses anything," she said. "I'm saying it explains some things. What does Hargrove want with me?" Ray asked. Dot gave him a long, level look. "I don't know yet," she said, "but I'll listen. And in a town this size, listening is the same thing as investigating." Ray nodded. He believed her. That evening, Thursday, Ray drove past Greystone Falls High on his way home. Practice had just ended. Parking lot was clearing out. He could see the football team coming off the back field, big shapes moving in the fading light. He didn't stop, but he saw Garrett Wynn come out of the athletic entrance. The boy stopped on the sidewalk, looking at something on his phone. Something about the way he stood, alone, outside the noise of the team around him, was different from the Garrett that Mia had described. The posture was quieter, less armored. A car pulled up to the curb, a nice car. County plates. Garrett's posture changed, shoulders back, chin up. The performance reassembling itself. He got into the car. Ray drove home. He understood now, a little better, what he was dealing with. Not a simple bully. Not a simple anything. A boy who had been built into a certain shape by a man with his own agenda. A shape designed to serve that agenda, which meant the real problem wasn't Garrett Wynn. The real problem was the man in the car. Thursday practice came and went. Maya came home quiet in the way that meant she was processing, not in the way that meant she was hurt. Ray knew the difference. He'd spent 17 years learning the difference. She changed clothes, made herself a cup of tea, sat at the kitchen table with her hands around the cup. Ray finished the dishes from dinner, hung up the towel, sat down across from her. He waited. That was the other thing he'd learned. You couldn't pull things out of Mia. You had to make room and let her decide when to put them there. She looked up after a while. "Practice was good," she said. "Coach Birch is good. I kept up fine, but," Ray said. Maya looked at her tea. "There are people in that school who have decided I don't belong there," she said, "before they've spoken to me. Before they know anything about me." She paused. "It started on Monday. It'll get worse before it stops." Ray looked at his hands on the table. "What have they done so far?" he said. "Looks. Conversation they make sure I can hear. People who would normally talk to a new kid, they don't." She Garrett Wynn specifically. Garrett Wynn specipiture. "Everyone else just followed it. Has anything physical happened?" "No online?" Mia hesitated. "Not yet." He heard the "not yet." "You've got a notebook," he said. It wasn't a question. He knew her. "I've got a notebook." "Good," he said it simply. "You document everything. Date, times. What was said. Who was there? I know, Daddy. I know you know." He looked at her. "I'm saying it so we both know we're doing this together." She looked at him for a moment. Something shifted in her expression, a small releasing of something. "I don't want you to do anything," she said. "I don't want you to go up there," and she made a gesture that summarized, without words, everything Ray had been capable of doing for most of his adult life. "I just need you to know I understand," he said. "Do you?" He was quiet for a moment, honest with himself in the way that he tried these last few years to be honest. "I want to," he said. "That's different from can, but I want to." Maya looked at him, a long, measuring look that had her mother in it. "That's enough," she said. They sat in the kitchen. The old house settled around them. The truck went past on Maple Drive. The refrigerator made its low, constant sound. "Daddy," Mia said, "This place, I think it could be the one." She said it carefully, like she was testing the words for structural integrity. "It feels different. I don't know why yet, but it feels different." Ray looked at his daughter across the table. She looked in that moment like the particular combination she was. Half her mother's hope and half something she'd built herself, out of 5 towns and every first day and all the unpacked and repacked boxes. "Yeah," he said. "It does outside." The Tennessee night was full and dark and quiet. A good kind of quiet, the kind that didn't have anything hiding in it. Not yet, but Ray knew what he knew. Somewhere in this town, in a nice car with county plates, a man named Beau Hargrove was also sitting with his thoughts, and those two facts, Mia's hope and Hargrove's fear, were on a collision course that Ray couldn't stop. What he could do was make sure he was standing in the right place when it happened. He went to bed at 10 o'clock, lay in the dark, listened to the house, then he reached to the nightstand, picked up the silver ring he always took off at night, and held it for a moment in his palm. "Linda, I'm trying," he thought. "I don't know if I'm doing it right, but I'm trying." He set the ring back down, closed his eyes. Tomorrow he had a garage to run, a town to understand, daughter to watch over without her seeing him watching, and a man from 1999 who apparently had not forgotten him and was not done deciding what to do about that. Ray Calloway went to sleep. Outside, Greystone Falls was quiet under a Tennessee sky full of stars, the kind of stars you only saw when you were far enough from city lights to remember they were actually there. The hawk on the water tower spread its painted wings over the sleeping town. And in the morning, it would all continue. Second week started quietly. That was the thing about small towns. Quiet wasn't always peaceful. Sometimes it was the quiet of people who had decided, together and without saying so, to wait and see. Ray felt it when he walked into the hardware store on Monday morning. The man behind the counter, 50s gray work shirt, name tag that said Norm, looked up, nodded, went back to the inventory he was counting. Not unfriendly, not warm either. Particular neutral of a man who had heard something and was withholding judgment. Ray bought what he needed, said thank you, left. He understood. He'd been the subject of rumors before. He knew how they traveled, faster than news, slower than fire, and with a staying power that neither one had. The article hadn't run yet. But the conversation had started. Dot was behind the counter when he came in at 6:30. She set his coffee down before he sat. She'd started doing that, timing it to his arrival. It was a small thing. The kind of small thing that told you more about a person than a long conversation. "You hear from your friend?" she asked. Ray looked at her. "Ghost," he said. "How do you know about Ghost?" "I don't. I know you've been expecting someone." She refilled the cup of one of the regulars without being asked. "You check your phone differently when you're waiting for something." He looked at her for a moment. "You'd have done well in a different line of work." "I did fine in this one," she said. "What did he say?" Ray considered what to tell her. He'd learned over 37 years of navigating situations where information was currency, that you told people what they needed to know in the order they needed to know it. Not everything at once. Not out of dishonesty, out of care. Too much at once overwhelmed. Too little insulted. "He's coming," Ray said. "End of the week." Dot nodded, set down the coffee pot, leaned slightly on the counter. "There's something I didn't tell you last week," she said. Figured. She looked at him. "Gerald, my husband. The year before he died, he was working on something. He was a careful man. Patient. He kept records the way some men keep tools, organized, labeled in the right place." She paused. "After he died, found a box in the back of the garage. Files, notes, names, Hargrove," Ray said. "Hargrove," she confirmed. Gerald had been documenting financial connections, land transactions, pattern of city council votes that's always seemed to benefit the same 3 property development companies. She straightened up, looked out the window at Main Street. "The box is still in my garage," Ray said. "Why haven't you done anything with it?" She didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was steady. The steadiness of something that had been hard and had made peace with, because 2 weeks after Gerald died, she said, Hargrove came in here for breakfast. Sat right where you're sitting, ate his eggs. And when he was leaving, very quietly, very calmly, he said to me that he was sorry for my loss and that he hoped I was taking care of myself. She picked up the coffee pot again. He didn't threaten me, she said. He didn't say anything specific. He just let me understand that he knew what Gerald had been doing and that he was aware I was now alone. Ray looked at her. Looked back. I have a diner, she said. I have 11 employees. I have a lease that comes up for renewal every 3 years. I am one woman in a town where he's been the most powerful person for 12 years. She paused. So I waited. For what? Ray asked. She looked at him steadily. For someone who didn't have anything in this town to lose, she said, and who had the particular kind of experience that makes a person very hard to frighten. Ray was quiet for a long moment. He thought about what it meant. That this woman had been waiting and keeping her dead husband's box of evidence in her garage, serving coffee every morning to a town that didn't know what she knew. For 9 years. That was not a small thing. That was an enormous thing worn quietly. The box, he said. Does it have anything from 1999? Frowned slightly. I don't know. I haven't gone through all of it. Gerald started before 1999. Why? Because I have something from 1999, Ray said. And I think they might fit together. He told her about the photograph. Not everything. Just what was relevant. The gathering. The man who didn't belong. The information that changed hands. Listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. You've had that photograph for 25 years, she said. I didn't know it mattered until a week ago. She nodded slowly. Gerald always said the man was careful, that he never left anything in his own name, that the connections existed but were always one step removed. A photograph from 1999 of a man at a meeting he shouldn't have been at corroborates a pattern, said. It's not proof by itself, but it's a beginning. She looked at him. Gerald would have wanted to know about it. Ray looked down at his coffee. He thought, I've been carrying something useful for 25 years and didn't know it. And a woman I met 8 days ago has been carrying something useful for 9 years and couldn't use it alone. This was how things work sometimes. Not dramatically, just. 2 people who had pieces, finally in the same room. He walked back to the garage. The morning was cool, sharp smelling. The particular quality of Tennessee air in fall that always reminded him of engines running clean. Something crisp and functional about it. He opened the bay doors, turned on the radio. Got to work at 9:15. His first customer of the week came in. A woman in her 40s with a Chevy Tahoe that had been making a sound she described as like a cat who's annoyed but not alarmed. Ray listened to the sound, diagnosed it in 4 minutes, explained it to her without condescension. Gave her a fair price. She seemed surprised by all 3 of those things. She left. Came back an hour later with a referral. Her brother-in-law with a Ford F-150 that needed new brake pads. Word traveled fast in small towns. That went both ways. Maya texted at noon. Lunch today was fine. Notebook has 3 new entries. Nothing texted back. Good, you eating? Yes, Dadek shoot or food or vending machine. A pause then. Both. He put the phone down. Went back to the F-150. He was okay. She was okay. For right now, that was enough. Thing about Garrett Wynn was that he was smart. That was what made him effective. He didn't use the blunt tools. He didn't shove people or say things loud enough for teachers to hear. He used the sophisticated tools that were harder to document and harder to explain. By the end of the 2nd week, the mechanism was visible if you knew how to look. Maya explained it to Ray that Friday evening, sitting on the back steps of the house, both of them with cups of coffee because she'd started drinking coffee that summer and he decided not to make it a battle. He doesn't do anything himself, she said. He sets conditions. He decides publicly, in the cafeteria, in the hallways, at practice, what the social temperature is. And everyone else reads the temperature and responds to it, like a thermostat, Ray said. Exactly like a thermostat. She wrapped both hands around her mug. So nobody in that school has done anything to me that I could take to a teacher and say, this person did this. What they've done is make it so that I exist in a negative space. People look past me. Conversations stop when I walk up, sit down at a table, and 2 minutes later it empties. Ray looked at the backyard. It was just grass and one old oak tree, but he'd started to like it. He liked the oak especially. Something about the size of it, the decades it implied. How's practice? He asked. Mia was quiet for a moment. Practice is the one place it's different, because Coach Birch is there and Birch doesn't run her gym on social temperature. She runs it on whether you can do the work. A pause. And I can do the work, I know, Ray said. I'm probably going to make the squad. He looked at her. Birch hasn't said it yet, Mia said. but I can tell. She's stopped watching me the way she watches the others. She watches the others to see if they're good enough. She watches me to figure out where to put me." The corner of her mouth lifted. "It's a different kind of watching." Ray felt something, a particular kind of relief that had nothing to do with the situation being resolved. It was the relief of seeing Yerk be competent, seeing them read a situation correctly and hold their ground inside it. "Has Garrett been at practice?" he asked. "Football and cheer don't overlap. But he's in the parking lot when we come out sometimes," she said it evenly. "Not doing anything. Just there." Ray's jaw tightened slightly. He kept it off his face. "You said the notebook has entries," he said. 12 now. "Dates, times, specific incidents." She looked at him. "I know what to document, Daddy. You raised me in garages. I know how to keep records." He almost smiled at that. "All right," he said. They sat quietly for a while. The oak tree moved slightly in the evening breeze. "Something not gonna break," Mia said. "Not defensive. Just factual. I've been the new kid 4 times before. I know how to not break. I know you do," Ray said. "But I need you to stay steady," she said. "Because if you go up there and do something—" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. He knew what the end of it looked like. He'd lived most of it. "It gets worse. Not better. It gives them a story about me, and the story becomes the thing, not what they did." He looked at her. She was right. She was absolutely right. And the fact that she was right, that she'd thought it through this clearly, was both something to be proud of and something that made him quietly furious at the world for requiring her to think that clearly at 17. "I hear you," he said. "Good," she said, and drank her coffee. The following Monday it went online, an account with a scrambled username. A photograph of Mia in the school hallway, taken from behind, with a caption that Ray could not bring himself to repeat even in his own mind. Comments from other accounts. Some clearly the same person, some real students who should have known better. Maya showed him Monday evening. "Set the phone on the kitchen table. Let him look." He looked at it for a long time, his hand on the disabled to the phone were very still. He had learned, in a long and not entirely admirable life, how to keep his body still when his mind was not. It was a skill you acquired either through discipline or through experience. He'd acquired it through both. "I've already reported it," Mia said. Screenshot, report, document. "Good. School has a policy. They're supposed to investigate, will they?" Mia looked at him steadily. "I don't know. That depends on things I can't control." He pushed the phone back across the table. Looked at his daughter. "You're not going to let this stop you," he said. It was not a question. "No," she said. "But I'm also not going to pretend it doesn't hurt." That was the thing about Mia. She had both at the same time, the toughness and the honesty about what the toughness cost. He hadn't always been able to hold both things himself. He was still learning. "It should hurt," he said. "It's wrong. It should hurt." He paused. "And you're still going to practice Thursday?" "Yes," she said. "Okay." They ordered pizza that night. Ate it in the living room with the television on. Some nature documentary neither of them chose to watch, but didn't change either. Normalcy was deliberate and necessary. Normal was something you constructed in the margins of hard things. Ray had learned that too. Tuesday morning, Ray went to see Coach Birch. He went before school started. Found her in her office off the gym, coffee on the desk, schedule on the wall, the particular organized chaos of an educator who ran several things at once. He knocked. She looked up. "Mr. Calloway," she said. No surprise. He sat down across from her without being invited. She didn't seem to mind. "You've seen what's happening to my daughter online," he said. "Yes, directly." He appreciated that. "I reported it to the principal Sunday night when a student brought it to my attention." "What's the principal going to do?" Birch looked at him steadily. Then she looked at the wall. Then back at him. "The principal will investigate," she said, "which means he'll speak to the students involved, who will deny it. He'll document the conversation. And he'll send a letter home to parents and Hargrove's stepson," Ray said. A slight stillness in Birch's expression. "Something being measured. What do you know about Bo Hargrove?" she asked. "Some," Ray said. "What do you know?" She looked at him for a moment. Then she stood up, walked to the door of her office, looked into the empty gym and came back. She sat down. 11 years I've been at this school," she said. "I've watched 6 students leave because of systemic social targeting. 3 families move away because their kids were made miserable. 2 good teachers quit because they couldn't enforce any standards in an environment where the most powerful parent in town could pick up the phone and make a call." She folded her hands on the desk. "My brother lost his landscaping business 8 years ago. He had a contract with the county. Hargrove pulled it when my brother testified against a zoning variance Hargrove wanted. And you stayed." Ray said. I stayed. Why? Because someone had to. She said it simply. No drama in it, and because I've been keeping records. Ray looked at her. What kind of records? He asked. 11 years of incident reports, documentation of what was reported to me, what I passed up the chain, and what happened in response. Dated, signed by me, stored, off-site. Ray was quiet for a moment. He thought about Dot's box in her garage. Birch's files stored off-site. His photograph in its envelope. He thought, how many people in this town have been quietly keeping records? How many people have been building something, separately, because they were waiting for a moment when it could mean something? My daughter's notebook has 12 entries, he said. Birch nodded. Tell her to keep going. She knows. Ray said. He stood to leave. At the door he stopped. Coach Birch, he said. My daughter's good. Yes, Birch said. She is. She's going to keep coming to practice. I expect her to. Ray left. Ghost arrived on Wednesday. Ray heard the bike before he saw it. A sound he'd known for 30 years, distinctive even at a block's distance. An old Sportster, modified engine, slightly ragged idle that its owner had always refused to fix because he said it gave the bike personality. Ghost had not changed the opinion in 30 years. Some things about a person were immovable. Ray was changing a timing belt when the bike pulled into the lot. He came out of the bay wiping his hands on a shop rag. Virgil Ghost. Crandall was 63 years old. He was a tall man still, though the years had pulled him downward slightly the way years did. The shoulders not quite as square as they'd been, the movements more considered. His hair was white now, worn long enough to tie back, which he'd done under a half-helmet that he hung on the mirror of the Sportster when he climbed off. He had a long, weathered face and pale gray eyes, and a scar along his jawline that Ray had seen so many times over 30 years. It was simply part of what Ghost's face looked like. They stood 6 feet apart in the parking lot, 37 years of knowing each other, 22 years of not speaking. You look old, Ghost said. You look older, Ray said. Ghost looked at the garage, at the sign. At the Harley parked to one side. Nice setup, he said, working on it. A pause. The kind of pause between men who had things to say and were taking a moment to decide the order. Come inside, Ray said. Coffee's on. They sat in the small office at the back of the garage. Ray poured 2 cups from the machine he kept there. Nothing special, just functional, and they sat across from each other at the work desk. Ghost looked at his coffee. Then at Ray. You want to do the thing first or after? Ghost said. Ray knew what he meant. The thing. The 22 years of thing after, Ray said. Tell me about Hargrove first. Ghost nodded. He pulled out his phone. Old model, the kind people kept because they worked and there was no reason to change. He turned it to show Ray a photograph on the screen. That's from 2018, Ghost said. A man named Darnell Cooper's funeral. Ray looked at the photograph. A funeral gathering outside a church. 50, 60 people. And in the background, clearly not there in any official capacity, a man in a dark suit with the posture of someone who had come to make sure. Hargrove, Ray said. Hargrove. Ghost put the phone down. Cooper died of a heart attack. Legitimate from what I understand. But Hargrove showed up to that funeral personally. Now why does a county councilman from Greystone Falls drive 90 minutes to pay respects at a mid-level fence's funeral? Because Cooper knew something, Ray said. Because Cooper knew something, Ghost confirmed, and Hargrove wanted to see for himself that it was in the ground with him. Ray thought about the photograph in his jacket, the gathering in 1999. Cooper bringing the man in the blazer. Cooper brokered the 1999 meeting, Ray said. He brought Hargrove to us. I know. Ghost drank his coffee. I've been thinking about 1999 for a while now. When I heard Hargrove was asking about you, it clicked. What did Hargrove buy from us in 1999? Financial records, Ghost said. His opponent in a county commissioner race that year. A man named, I had to dig for this, Warren Lyle. Lyle ran a small construction company. Hargrove's people had been trying to find something irregular in his finances. Couldn't find it through legitimate channels, so he came to us. Cooper brought him to us. Club got the records through a contact who worked at a bank. Hargrove used them to imply Lyle had been misappropriating funds. Lyle couldn't disprove a negative fast enough. He lost the race. Ghost paused. And from there, Hargrove's career went upward. Ray was quiet. He thought about what Dot had told him about Earl Fletcher in 2018. The same pattern. 20 years apart but the same shape. He's been doing this his whole career, Ray said. Finding leverage. Using it, yes, Ghost said. And he's been careful. Always one step removed. Cooper was the buffer for the 1999 thing. Different buffers for different jobs. Nothing in his name but a photograph, Ray said. Ghost looked at him. You have it. I have it. Does he know? He knows I was at that gathering. He doesn't know if I have the photograph. He doesn't know what I remember. That's why he's watching you, Ghost said. He's not sure what you can prove, but he can't afford to find out. They sat with that for a moment. The radio in the bay played on. Conway Twitty. Something slow and certain about it. Fitch, Ray said. Her husband was putting something together before he died. Ghost looked at him 9 years ago. Gerald Fitch, you know about him? I know he was asking questions. I heard it at the time through Cooper. Actually, Cooper told me Gerald Fitch was becoming a problem. I didn't know what that meant until you just said it. Ghost set down his coffee cup. Ray. If Hargrove had something to do with what happened to Gerald Fitch, we don't know that, Ray said. Not yet, no. Ghost said, not yet. They both understood what yet meant. Now, Ghost said. The other thing, Ray looked at him. Ghost looked back. Just two men facing something, Portland, Ghost said. Portland, Ray said, 22 years ago. Situation that had required a decision that needed to be made fast and had consequences that lasted longer than either of them had anticipated. Ray had made the call. It had been the right call for the people Ray had decided to prioritize. It had been a costly call for Ghost. Ghost's daughter had been involved, tangentially, in a way that the decision had made worse before it made better. The worst part had lasted 3 years. The better part had taken longer to arrive. She's all right now, Ghost said. She's in Portland still. She's got a good life, I know, Ray said. I've kept track. Ghost looked at him sharply, not interfering, Ray said. Just knowing. Making sure Ghost was quiet for a long time. You should have told me, Ghost said. At the time. You should have told me what the decision was going to cost. There wasn't time, Ray said. And I knew you'd say no. I would have said no, and the other outcome would have been worse. I know that too, Ghost said. I've always known that too. He looked at his hands. Hands of a man who had lived in ways that left marks. Doesn't mean it didn't cost me things. No, Ray said. It doesn't. Silence. Then Ghost said, Laura asked about you last time I saw her. She knows, pieced it together eventually, what happened and what you were trying to do. She doesn't hold it against you. Ray said nothing. I do, Ghost said. Some, less than I used to. But some, that's fair, Ray said. I didn't come here to settle it, Ghost said. I'm not sure it settles. Came because what Hargrove is building toward, if he decides you're a threat he can't manage quietly, it won't stay clean. And your daughter is here. Ray looked at him. So, Ghost picked up his coffee cup. What's the plan? The article ran Thursday, not in the Nashville paper, in the Greystone Falls County Register, which Ray had not known existed until the digital notification appeared on his phone at 7 in the morning. Local business owners passed Ray's questions. He read it in the garage before opening. Read it twice, it was carefully written. Carefully was the word. There was nothing in it that was technically false. It mentioned his years with the Hells Angels. It mentioned a weapons possession charge from 1994 that had been dismissed. It mentioned the name Ironside and placed it in a context designed to be unsettling. It did not quote any named sources. It ran alongside a file photo of the garage, taken from the street. He sat with it for a few minutes. Then he called Dot. Seen the paper, he said. Sitting in front of me right now, she said. It's unsigned. That means it was submitted as a community letter with editorial endorsement, which means someone on the Register's board approved it. There are 3 people on that board. Let me guess, Ray said. Bo Hargrove's former law partner, Hargrove's brother-in-law, and a woman named Carol Pitts, who chairs the county planning committee. Dot paused. The planning committee that approves all Hargrove-adjacent development proposals, Ray said. He's not even trying to be subtle. He doesn't think he has to be, Dot said. He's done this before and it's worked before. Earl Fletcher. The zoning opposition in 2015, the Mendel family and their orchard in 2019. Same playbook. Create a noise. Let it sit. Watch the problem remove itself. I'm not going to remove myself, Ray said. I know that, Dot said. But he doesn't know that yet. He thinks you 2 choices. Leave. Engage in a way he can use against you. There's a 3rd choice, Ray said. Yes, Dot said. There is. Come to the diner this evening. 7 o'clock. After closing, he went at 7 that evening. Dot's was closed to the public. Chairs up on tables. Low lights in the back. There were 6 people there. Out Ray. A man named Hector Webb, who was 67 and had run the town pharmacy for 30 years. Quiet man. Substantial. He had the stillness of someone who had made a decision and arrived at peace with it. A woman named Faye Drummond, 58, retired schoolteacher, who had lived in Greystone Falls since birth and knew it better than the roadmap that existed of it. A man named Calvin Pruitt, no relation to the previous garage owner, who was 62, a carpenter, with the kind of hands that made Ray feel a kinship, hands that showed their history, and Coach Birch, who had arrived 5 minutes early and was drinking decaf and had a folder on the table in front of her. Ray sat, looked at the people around him. He thought, how long has each of these people been waiting? How many separate years of patience are represented at this table? Dot said, I ask people I trust. People who have specific reasons. She looked at Ray. I didn't ask anyone who didn't already have their own accounting with Bo Hargrove. We should say that plainly, Faye Drummond said. She had the manner of a teacher, direct, organized. We all have separate grievances. We're not a mob. We're people who have documented things and not had occasion to act on them. Mr. Calloway, she looked at Ray. You're not the reason we're here. You're the timing. Ray looked at her. Meaning? Meaning Hargrove has made a mistake with you, she said. He's used his playbook publicly, quickly, without confirming what you actually have on him. That's defensive. He's scared, and scared men make mistakes. Gerald used to say that, Dot said quietly. Faye nodded. Gerald was right about most things. They talked for 2 hours. Methodical. No dramatics. The kind of conversation that working people in their 50s and 60s have. Efficient, grounded, aware of what was realistic and what wasn't. Hector Webb had records of county pharmacy licensing decisions that had been made inconsistently, in ways that always seemed to benefit chains over independents, particularly when those independents had publicly opposed Hargrove's positions. Faye Drummond had 30 years of school board meeting minutes she'd kept personally, documenting budget decisions that didn't match public records. Calvin Pruitt had lost a county construction contract in 2020 under circumstances he'd had an attorney look at. The attorney said the process was legally defensible but ethically irregular. He'd kept the attorney's letter. Birch had her 11 years of incident reports. Dot had Gerald's box. Ray had the photograph. And Ghost, who had additional context for what the photograph separate. Each piece was a grievance together. It was a pattern. Pattern is not proof, Ray said. A lawyer will tell you that. Yes, Faye said, but pattern is what makes an investigator look, and what an investigation finds. That can be proof. What we need, Hector Webb said, is someone in a position to investigate who isn't connected to Hargrove. Everyone looked at Ray. He knew what they were thinking. The sheriff, Nora Dempsey, had a reputation for being independent, but there was a difference between reputation and proven fact. And approaching law enforcement with a collection of personal grievances and one old photograph required more than reputation. Let me handle the sheriff, Ray said. I'll feel it out, Dot nodded. And the newspaper piece? Calvin Pruitt asked. Ignore it, Ray said. Don't respond to it. Don't give it energy. People in this town know you. He looked around the table. They've known you for years. An unsigned article doesn't undo 40 years of a pharmacy. It doesn't undo 30 years of a classroom. It doesn't undo a woman who's made their breakfast every morning for 31 years. Dot almost smiled at that. Counts on reactions, Ray continued. He publishes something like that and waits to see how people respond. Defensiveness looks like guilt. Anger looks like confirmation. The answer is to just keep going. The group was quiet for a moment. That's hard. Faye Drummond said yes, Ray said. It is. He didn't dress it up. They appreciated that. He left the diner at 9:15. The night was cool. The main street was empty. The flags between the street lamps moved slightly in a light breeze. Stood outside for a moment. He thought about Linda. He thought about the early years, when she'd found out the extent of his history and had taken 3 days to decide what to do with that information, and then had come back and said, I'm not going to pretend I'm not afraid of parts of you, but I'm also not going to pretend I haven't seen what else you are. She was the only person in his life who had ever held both things about him at the same time, without one canceling the other. He thought, I'm trying to be the second part. The part she saw. He went home. Maya was at the kitchen table with homework and the radio on low. She looked up when he came in. How was your evening? She asked. Productive, he said. She looked at him a moment, knew there was more and knew he'd tell her what was relevant when it was relevant. There's chili on the stove, she said. Dot dropped it off earlier. She said you looked thin. Ray looked toward the stove. I'm not thin, he said. That's what I told her, Mia said, and went back to her homework. Friday came. The week had been. There wasn't a clean word for it. Hard in specific ways. The school's response to the online resmand had been exactly what Birch had predicted. Conversations, documentation, letters home, no consequences. The article in the Register had generated 3 cancellations at the garage, one of which Ray suspected was a coincidence and 2 of which were not against Dot's meeting. Birch's folder. Hector Webb's steady, quiet presence. Calvin Pruitt's handshake at the end of the evening. the handshake of a working man who had committed to something. The day ended, the garage closed. Ray drove home. Maya was on the back steps again. Same spot as the week before, same oak tree. Different quality of quiet. He came and sat beside her. She was looking at her phone. She turned it over when he sat down, screen down on the step beside her. Something happened today, she said. He waited. Garrett was in the parking lot after practice, she said. Not in his usual spot. He was closer. Closer than he needs to be, she paused. And when I came out of the gym, he looked at me, not with the usual thing, not the dismissal. Something else. What else? She thought about it. Like he was making sure I was still there. Like he was checking something. Ray thought about the car with county plates picking up Garrett after practice. Hargrove checking in. Hargrove wanting to know if his stepson's work was being effective. You were still there, Ray said. I was still there, Mia said. She picked up her phone. Put it down again. The account posted again, she said. More of the same. I've reported it twice now. The platform responded with a generic email. Screenshot it, he said. Every time I know, Daddy. He looked at the oak tree. I want to tell you something, he said. She looked at him. There are things happening that are bigger than the school, he said. Things that connect to the man who's been setting Garrett's temperature. I'm working on it. I have people helping me. Mia was quiet. Processing. Is it dangerous? She asked. Not in a physical way. Not at this point, he was honest. He'd promised himself years ago that he would not lie to her about risk. She'd built her entire sense of him around the parts he was honest about. He couldn't afford to let that erode. It's a man who uses systems and money and influence. Not violence, are you sure? He thought of Dot's husband. The road Gerald Fitch drove every day, reasonably sure, he said. She looked at him for a long moment. The oak tree moved. A dog barked somewhere down the block. Okay, she said, okay? You told me. She turned to face him more directly. You didn't try to keep it from me like I was 10. You're not 10, he said. No. She looked at her hands. Daddy, can I ask you something personal? Always. People in your past. The club. The life before. She chose her words carefully. He could see her being careful. Was there a point where you knew it needed to be different, or did it just stop? He thought about how to answer honestly. There were points where I knew, he said, and I chose not to do anything about them yet. Not yet, I told myself. It's not that bad yet. I can leave when I'm ready. But leaving on your own schedule, when you're ready, that rarely happens. What happens is something makes the decision for you. A line that gets crossed that you can't uncross. A consequence that can't be taken back. He paused. For me, it was your mother. She made me want to choose it rather than have it chosen for me. That's different. Wanting to leave is different from being forced out. Mia was quiet. Were you a bad person? She said. Simple. Direct. The way she asked all important things. I was a person who did some bad things, he said. Some things that weren't bad, but that existed in a world where the line was blurry. And I didn't always look at it carefully. He looked at her. There's a difference. I know that's what I'd say either way. But I believe it's true. She looked at him for a long time. Mom believed it, she said. Yeah, he said. She did. Then I believe it, Mia said. She said it the way she said things, not as comfort. As a fact she had evaluated and decided on. He looked at his daughter on the back steps of a rented house in Greystone Falls, Tennessee, fall of a year that had already held more than most years. He thought, she is 17. She has already had to be braver than I was at 25, and she is still kind. That is not a small thing. That is the thing, he thought. Linda, you see her, wherever you are. See her, I'm going to figure this out, he said. About Hargrove, about Garrett, about the whole shape of it. This is the one we stay in, I meant that. Mia leaned her head briefly against his shoulder, just for a second, then sat back up. I know, she said. The oak tree moved. The night settled. Somewhere across town, Bo Hargrove was in his house, in his certainty, making the calculations of a man who had always found a way through. He had not yet factored in the people sitting at the tables Ray had been sitting at. 31 years of breakfasts, the 11 years of incident reports, the 9 years of a box in a garage, the 25 years of a photograph in an envelope. He had not yet understood that the thing about quiet people, people who wait, who keep records, who do not react until they are ready, is that when they do move, they have already won. Ray went inside. He checked the lock on the front door, turned off the porch light. He stood in the kitchen for a moment in the dark, looking at nothing in particular. Then he went to the bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed, and picked up the silver ring from the nightstand. Linda. We're building something here, he thought. Me and Mia. We're building something small and real and worth staying for. I think you'd like Dot. I think you'd have figured out Hargrove in about 4 minutes. I think you'd tell me I'm doing it mostly right and what I need to fix. Tell me what I need to fix. He sat in the quiet, the house made its sounds, settled and breathed. He put the ring back. Lay down. Tomorrow Ghost was leaving. They had a plan, not a complete plan, not yet. But the beginning of one, the shape of one, a photograph. A box. 11 years of records. 6 people who had been waiting for the right moment and had decided this was it. And a daughter who had said I know in the way that meant she trusted him. He closed his eyes. It would continue tomorrow. It always continued tomorrow. That was both the difficulty of things and the grace of them. Ghost left on Saturday morning early. The way he'd arrived, before most of the town was up, before the diner opened, before the day had committed to being anything in particular, Ray walked him out to the Sportster. The air was cold now. Real cold, the kind that came off the Tennessee hills in late October and reminded you that warmth was something you had to earn, not assume. Ghost pulled on his jacket. Checked the saddlebag straps the way riders always check them. Not because they needed checking, because the ritual of it settled something. The photograph, Ghost said. Make a copy. Store it somewhere that isn't your house. Already done, Ray said. Ghost nodded. He swung a leg over the bike. Sat for a moment without starting it. I want to say something. He said. Ray waited. What happened in Portland? Ghost looked at the handlebars. Not at Ray. I spent a long time being angry about it. Then I spent some time trying to understand it. Then I spent some time deciding whether to stay angry or let it be what it was. What it was you making a call in 10 seconds that I've spent 22 years analyzing. And you were right. I've known you were right for a long time. Ray said nothing. I'm not saying it's all the way settled, Ghost said. Saying it's mostly settled. And that's more than I thought I'd get to. He looked at Ray now. You're doing right by your daughter. I can see that. Trying to, Ray said. Trying is most of it. Ghost reached out his hand. Ray shook it. The handshake of men who had been through things together and come out the other side. Not friends exactly anymore. Something older than friendship. Something that didn't have a clean name. Ghost started the Sportster. The ragged idol filled the morning. He pulled out of the lot. Turned left on Birch Street, was gone. Ray stood there a moment in the exhaust and the cold. 22 years, sometimes things didn't get resolved. They just got smaller. Not gone, just smaller. Small enough to carry without it being the thing that defined everything else. He went back inside and made coffee. He called Sheriff Dempsey at 9 that morning. He'd met her once briefly, outside the hardware store 2 weeks prior. Norm at the counter had introduced them. Dempsey was 58, medium height, brown hair cut practically. She had the manner of someone who had spent decades being underestimated and had stopped being bothered by it because the underestimation was usually useful. She answered on the second ring. Mr. Calloway, she said. Not surprised, Sheriff. I'd like to meet with you. I figured you'd call eventually. A pause. Not my office. Coffee somewhere neutral? Dot's is closed Sunday, Ray said. But Dot will open it for us if I ask. Beat. You've gotten to know Dot Fitch. She makes good coffee, Ray said, a sound that might have been a laugh. Brief. Sunday at 8, Dempsey said. And Mr. Calloway, bring whatever you have, not descriptions of what you have. The actual things, understood, Ray said. He made another call after that, his lawyer in Memphis. A woman named Patricia Owens, who had been practicing for 30 years and had the professional manner of someone who charged appropriately for her time and was worth every cent of it. He explained the situation. She asked 3 questions, told him what he could say to law enforcement and what he should let her handle. The photograph, she said. If Hargrove can establish you accessed certain financial documents to obtain it. I didn't access anything, Ray said. I was present at a meeting. The photograph was taken by someone else and I kept a copy. I have not used it, not shown it to anyone outside a private conversation, and I have not made any demands based on it. Good, Patricia said. Keep it exactly that way. You're a witness. You're not a participant in anything current. That's what I am, Ray said. I'll drive up Tuesday, she said. Don't do anything before I get there. Sunday morning, I'm meeting with the local sheriff. A pause. Ray, I know, he said. Timeline is moving. Hargrove is moving. If I wait for perfect conditions, I'll be waiting past the moment. She was quiet for a moment. I'll be there Monday evening. Don't show the photograph to Dipsy until I'm present, Ferry said. He hung up. He looked out the garage window at Birch Street. A leaf skittered across the pavement. A couple walked past with a dog, the dog investigating everything with the thorough enthusiasm of animals who never got tired of the world being interesting. He thought, step at a time. This is how you do hard things. One step, then the next. He'd learned that in garages. You didn't fix an engine by thinking about all of it at once. You worked the problem in front of you until it was solved. Then you moved to the next one. Turned back to the workbench. He had a carburetor to rebuild. He started there. Following Monday, Mia came home from school and sat at the kitchen table and didn't take her jacket off, Ray noticed. He dried his hands on the dish towel, came and sat across from her. "Tell me," he said. She looked at the table, then at him. "Something different happened today," she said. "Different how?" "Garrett found me after school. Not in a group, alone in the parking lot." She looked at her hands. "He didn't threaten me. He didn't say anything about the online stuff. He just came and stood there for a second. And then he said, 'I need to tell you something.'" Ray was very still. "And," he said, and then Marcus Webb came out of the building and called his name. And Garrett looked at Marcus and then looked back at me, and the thing on his face, it closed down, like a door closing." She paused. He said, "Never mind," and walked away. Ray thought about what Dot had told him. Garrett in the diner on Sunday mornings when Hargrove wasn't there. The different person. The one who held doors and listened to his mother. The door that opened and closed depending on who was watching. "He was going to tell you something he didn't want Marcus to hear," Ray said. "That's what I think," Mia said. "How did he look?" Specifically, he thought about it. Tired. Like, she searched for the word. Like someone who's been carrying something heavy and for just a second thought about putting it down. And then remembered they couldn't. Ray nodded slowly. He thought about being 18 years old and believing the only options available to you were the ones someone else had decided on. He'd been 24 before he understood that wasn't true. And the understanding hadn't saved him from 15 more years of wrong turns. "What do you think he was going to say?" he asked. Maya looked at him steadily. "I think he was going to tell me that he was doing it because Hargrove told him to. Not because he chose to, and you think that matters?" She was quiet for a moment. "I think it doesn't change what he did. But I think it changes what he is." She paused. "Mom used to say there's a difference between the choices people make and the conditions that made those choices feel like the only options." Ray looked at his daughter. Linda had said that. He remembered her saying it in the context of him in the early years when she was trying to understand the shape of who he'd been. He hadn't known Mia remembered it. "What do you want to do?" he said. "I want to talk to him," she said. Alone, without the audience, she looked at Ray directly, not to forgive him, not yet, to understand him. Because if he knows something about Hargrove and he's trying to get it out, that matters. Ray looked at his daughter for a long moment, 17 years old, thinking 3 steps ahead and checking her own motivations in the same breath. "Be careful," he said. "I know. If he says anything specific about Hargrove, you tell me word for word. Don't interpret, don't summarize. Word for word," she said. She finally took her jacket off. 2 days later, Wednesday, Mia found the moment after practice, the parking lot emptying. She came around the side of the gym building and Garrett was there, alone this time, hands in his jacket pockets, looking at his phone without really looking at it. He looked up when she came around the corner. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Maya said, "You were going to tell me something Monday." Garrett looked at the ground. Then back at her. "I shouldn't be talking to you." He said, "You came to the parking lot," she said. "You could have been anywhere else." Answered, "Didn't leave? Why is your stepfather interested in my father?" Mia said, direct. No build-up. Garrett's expression shifted. She'd named it. He hadn't expected that. "What do you know about my stepfather?" he said. "Enough to know this isn't about me," Mia said. "What I want to know is why. What does Hargrove think my father has?" Garrett looked around the parking lot. The automatic surveillance of someone who'd grown up in a house where being overheard had consequences. "He told me." Garrett stopped. Started again. "He told me your father was someone who could make trouble for him. That it was important for your father to understand Greystone Falls wasn't the right fit for him." He looked at Mia. "He didn't tell me why. But you did what he asked," Mia said. Garrett's jaw tightened. Something moved through his face. Not anger at her. Anger at something else, something internal. "I always do what he asks," he said. The words came out with a weight that surprised both of them. Like something heavier than he'd meant to put down, Maya looked at him. "Do you know what he asked you to do was wrong?" Silence. "Yes," Garrett said. Quiet. Just the one word. "Then why?" He looked at her with the expression of someone being asked to explain gravity. "Because I've been doing what he asks since I was 9 years old. Because in my house, doing what he asks is what makes things safe. For my mom. For..." He stopped. Maya's eyes went briefly to the scar on his left forearm. She'd noticed it the first day. Garrett saw her looking. "Dirt bike accident," he said. "When I was 14, I'd been asking Bo for 2 years to let me ride. He kept saying no." He looked at the scar. One day I just did it anyway, without asking. Came home with this, he paused. He didn't yell, he didn't say anything. He just looked at it and said, "Now you know what happens when you make decisions without me." Mia was quiet. "So you stopped making decisions without him," she said. "For 4 years, Garrett said. "Yeah." He said it like a man who had just counted something and found the number worse than he'd expected. For himself. He didn't say it. She heard it anyway. Maya was quiet for a moment. She thought about what her father had said on the back steps about the years when leaving felt impossible. About how understanding a thing was different from excusing it. "Your stepfather thinks my father has something from 1999, Mia said. "Something that happened at a meeting." A photograph. Garrett's face confirmed it before he said anything. He knew about 1999. "Or enough of it, he's been worried about it for years," Garrett said. "When your dad came here, he panicked." "I've never seen him panic before." He looked at Mia. "What's in the photograph?" "That's between my father and Sheriff Dempsey," Mia said. Something moved through Garrett's face. Relief, she thought. The relief of a man-sized boy who was exhausted by the weight of being inside a secret and had just been told he didn't have to hold it alone anymore. "Dempsey's straight," he said. "She's the one person in this county Bo can't touch." "I know," Mia said. He looked at her for a long moment. "I could." He stopped. Then, if someone were to talk to Dempsey, officially, about things they'd seen and heard in that house over 12 years, his voice was careful. Would that help? Mia looked at him. She thought about her father saying, "Word for word, I think." She said carefully, "that you should make that decision for yourself, not for me, not because of anything I said." She held his gaze. "If you know things that are true, and you tell them to the right person, it's not doing someone a favor. That's just doing the right thing." Garrett was quiet. The parking lot was almost empty now. The last car pulled out. The football field lights clicked off in the distance. "I'm sorry," Garrett said, "for what I did to you." "All of it." Mia looked at him. "Took a moment to decide what was true, I know," she said. "That doesn't fix it yet. But it's a start." She walked to the pickup where Ray was waiting. She got in, put on her seatbelt. Ray looked at her. She told him word for word. He drove home without saying much. But she saw in the set of his shoulders as he drove that something had shifted. Sunday at 8, Dot's place. Dot had the back booth ready. Coffee made. The front door locked, shades half drawn. The particular intimacy of a public space made private. Sheriff Nora Dempsey came in the back entrance, the one through the kitchen. She sat across from Ray. Tricia Owens, Ray's lawyer, sat to his left. She'd driven up the night before. As promised, Dot sat at the end of the table. She'd been included without discussion. This was her space, her husband's evidence, her 9 years of waiting. She had earned her seat at this conversation. Dempsey looked at the people at the table. Then at Ray. "Before you show me anything," she said, "I want to say something for the record. Even though this isn't on record yet." She folded her hands on the table. "I have had suspicions about Bo Hargrove for 7 years. I have not been able to act on those suspicions, because suspicion without evidence, in a county where Hargrove has significant influence over budget approvals, including my department's budget, is a career-ending exercise." Ray nodded. "I want you to understand," Dempsey said, "that my interest here is in what's true and what's legal, not in settling grievances, not in local politics. If what you have doesn't meet the bar of evidence, I will tell you that plainly, and you'll need to find another avenue." "Understood," Patricia Owens said. "And I want to understand something else." Dempsey looked at Ray directly. "Your interest in this, you moved here. He came after you, or more accurately, he came after your daughter to pressure you. Why are you pressing forward rather than leaving?" Ray looked at her. "Because I said I was staying," he said. "Because my daughter is in that school, and this is the town I chose, and I am 60 years old, and I am done letting men like Hargrove decide where I belong." He paused. "And because Dot's husband is buried in the cemetery on Route 7, and I believe he shouldn't be." Silence. Dempsey looked at Dot. Dot looked back steadily. "All right," Dempsey said. "Show me what you have." Patricia Owens placed the photograph on the table first. She had made 5 copies. One for Dempsey, one archived off-site, one with Patricia, one with Ray, one secured with a contact in Nashville. The original was in a bank-safe deposit box in Memphis, rented the previous week. Dempsey looked at the photograph. Ray walked her through it. The date. The location. Darnell Cooper. What Cooper said Hargrove wanted and why. What was exchanged. What Hargrove's opponent in the 1999 county commissioner race, Warren Lyle, subsequently went through. Dempsey listened without interrupting. "Can you identify the man in the photograph as Hargrove?" She said. "Not with certainty from this image alone," Ray said. But I was present. I saw him. Can make a sworn statement identifying him. A sworn statement from a man with a criminal history involving the Hells Angels, Dempsey said. Not unkindly. Just accurately. Dismissed weapons charge from 1994, Patricia said. No convictions. And a sworn statement from a direct witness to an event 25 years ago has evidentiary value regardless of the witness's background. I know that, Dempsey said. I'm saying it because a good defense attorney will say it louder. She looked at the photograph again. What else? Dot put Gerald's box on the table. She'd sorted through it over the past 2 weeks. Organized it the way Gerald would have wanted, chronological labeled, with a summary sheet at the front in Gerald's handwriting that she'd found tucked into a folder she hadn't opened until last Monday. The summary sheet listed dates, names, and the nature of each document. It was Gerald Fitch's own index to his own investigation, written in the careful hand of a man who expected someone to find it and needed them to be able to use it. Dempsey read the summary sheet. Read it again. She looked at Dot. When did you find this? She said. 10 days ago, Dot said. I'd been through the box before, but not all the way through. The folder was at the bottom. Gerald wrote this summary. Dempsey said, yes, in his handwriting. Yes. Dempsey sat back. Gerald Fitch had a college degree in accounting, she said. Before he married you, he worked for a regional bank for 11 years. Is that right? Yes, Dot said. This summary, Dempsey looked at it again. This is the work of someone who understood financial documentation, who understood what constituted evidence. Gerald was careful about everything, Dot said. Dempsey looked at the table for a moment. I need to say something, she said. She said it carefully. Gerald Fitch's accident. I was not sheriff in 2015. I became sheriff in 2017. I inherited a case file that was closed as accidental. I looked at it when I first took office because it was the kind of case I look at when I take over. Ones that don't sit right. She paused. It didn't sit right, but I didn't have grounds to reopen it. Not then. Dot was very still. With this box, Dempsey said quietly, and with what we're building today, we may have grounds. The silence at the table was the particular silence of something that had been needed for a long time and had just arrived. Dot looked at her coffee cup. Ray didn't look at anyone. He looked at the table. He thought about what it meant. This woman had been keeping her husband's records in a box in her garage for 9 years and making breakfast every morning and waiting. The endurance of that. He thought, that is a kind of courage that doesn't look like courage. That is the hardest kind. Coach Birch's folder went on the table next. 11 years of incident reports. Then Dempsey listened to what Mia had told Ray about Garrett. Word for word, as Mia had given it to him. When he was done, Dempsey said, if Garrett Wynn voluntarily made a statement to me, as an adult without coercion with counsel present, that would be significant. He's 18, Ray said. I know. Which means he can make that decision himself. Dempsey looked at Ray. I'm not going to pursue him. If he comes to me, I'll hear him. I won't come to him, Ray nodded. That was the right answer. The meeting lasted 2.5 hours. When it was over, Dempsey gathered the copies of what she'd been given. She stood, put on her coat. She looked at Ray. I'm going to make some calls Monday morning, she said. There's a federal attorney in Nashville I've worked with before. What's in this box, combined with your photograph and a potential witness statement? That's the beginning of a federal election interference investigation. That's not a local matter anymore. How long? Patricia asked. These things take time, Dempsey said, but I want to be honest with you. Hargrove has been operating carefully for a long time. He's going to lawyer up immediately. He's going to try to get ahead of it. She looked at Ray. Is there anything he could use against you that we don't know about? Ray thought about it. Honestly. Fully nothing current, he said. The record is the record. There's nothing hidden. All right, Dempsey looked at Dot. Mrs. Fitch, I want you to know, I don't make promises about outcomes, but I promise you I'm going to work this as hard as it can be worked. Dot looked at her. That's all Gerald would have asked for, she said. Dempsey left through the kitchen. Dot sat back down. Tricia Owens started putting her papers away with the efficient motion of someone whose job had been done correctly. Ray looked at Dot. She was looking at Gerald's summary sheet, still on the table in front of her. Her hand was near it but not touching it. He knew someone would find it, she said. Quiet, certain. He left it where I'd find it when I was ready, not when he was gone. When I was ready, Ray said nothing. 9 years, she said. I wasn't ready for 8.5 of them. She picked up the summary sheet, folded it carefully along the original creases. He would have liked you, she said to Ray, Gerald. He would have said you were a man who did hard things for the right reasons, which was more than he could say for most. Ray looked at the table. I haven't always. He said no, Dot said, but here. Hargrove came to the garage on a Wednesday afternoon. Ray saw the car from inside the bay. County plates, the particular black sedan he'd seen picking up Garrett after practice. He kept working, didn't stop, didn't look up until the footsteps stopped at the bay door. Hargrove was 56 years old. He looked like what he was, a man who had spent 12 years being the most powerful person in a room and had stopped questioning whether that was his natural right. Suit jacket, no tie today. An attempt at casual that didn't quite land. He stood in the bay door. Ray set down the wrench, wiped his hands on the shop rag. Turned around, neither of them spoke for a moment. Then Hargrove said, "I thought we should talk, all right," Ray said. Hargrove looked at the garage, at the tools, at the Harley parked to one side. He was doing the thing powerful men did, taking inventory, looking for leverage, finding the thing that told him who he was dealing with. Ray let him look. "You've been here 2 months," Hargrove said. "Made some friends, stirred some things up. I opened a garage," Ray said. "Fixed some cars," Ray, the first name, deliberate. Mean to establish something. "I'm not here to threaten you. I want to be clear about that." "Okay," Ray said. "I'm here because I think there's been a misunderstanding. About what I want and what you want." He paused. "I don't have any issue with you personally. What happened in Greystone Falls before you came here? Those are old stories. Old politics. Nobody needs to dig all that up." Ray looked at him. He thought about Gerald Fitch, about the road he drove every day, about a box sitting in a garage for 9 years. He thought about Mia sitting at a cafeteria table watching it empty when she sat down. He said, "You came here to tell me to drop it. I came here to tell you that Greystone Falls can be a good home for you and your daughter. Smooth. Practiced. That doesn't have to change." Ray looked at this man for a long moment. He thought about all the things he could say, all the years of knowing men like this, men who had learned to say the threatening thing in the language of the reasonable thing. Men who depended on the other person understanding the subtext without being able to point at the text. What he said was very simple. "Mr. Hargrove," he said, "I'm going to finish fixing this truck. Then I'm going to lock up the garage and go home and have dinner with my daughter. And tomorrow morning I'm going to come back and fix the next truck." He picked up the wrench. "That's what I'm going to do. Every day. For as long as I live here." He turned back to the truck. Hargrove stood in the bay door for another moment. "Ray, you know where the door is," Ray said. Without turning around, a long silence, then footsteps. The sound of the car door, the engine starting. Ray worked. The radio played on. He didn't watch the car leave. He didn't need to. He already knew what Hargrove had seen when he looked at the garage. A man who had nothing left to lose that he hadn't already decided to protect. And that was the one kind of man Hargrove had never found a way to move. The article from the County Register had run 3 weeks prior. The effect had been what Ray predicted. A murmur, a few lost customers, some careful distance from people who were watching to see which way things went. Then on Thursday of the following week, something else ran, not in the Register, in the Nashville Tennessean. The reporter's name was James Holt. He was 43, had been covering Tennessee politics for 15 years, and had the particular quality of a journalist who was not interested in performing journalism but in doing it. Holt had been pointed toward Greystone Falls 6 days earlier. Not by Ray. Not directly. What had happened was this. Faye Drummond, who had 30 years of school board meeting minutes and had taught many students at Greystone Falls High, had a former student named Rebecca Chai who was now an editor at the Tennessean. Faye had called Rebecca. Rebecca had called Holt. Holt had spent 4 days in Greystone Falls talking to people. He'd eaten at Dots 3 times. He'd spoken to Hector Webb. He'd reviewed public records, which were public, which required no cooperation from Hargrove. The article ran Thursday morning. 12 years of influence. How one county councilman shaped and profited from Greystone Falls. It was 5,000 words. It was documented. It named names and it cited sources, and it connected the publicly available dots with the care of someone who had done this many times and understood that the work was in the verifiability. It did not mention Ray Calloway. It did not mention any active law enforcement investigation. It mentioned Dot's Diner by name. In the context of Greystone Falls as a community, Ray read it at the garage, 6:30 in the morning, coffee on the workbench. He read it twice. Then he set his phone down and went to work. By noon the calls had started, not to Ray, to Hargrove's office. 3 county council members called for a statement. The Register, which had run the piece about Ray 3 weeks prior, ran a response piece that was so visibly defensive it functioned as its own confirmation. By 2 in the afternoon, 2 of the 3 businesses that had canceled garage appointments called to reschedule. Ray took both calls. Made both appointments. Said nothing about the article. At 3, Hector Webb walked across from the pharmacy and stood in the bay door of the garage. Hell of a morning, Hector said. Seems like, Ray said. Faye called me. Said the council is meeting tonight. Emergency session. He looked at Ray. Hargrove's going to try to get ahead of it. He can try, Ray said. Hector looked at him for a moment. You're calm. I'm working, Ray said. Hector almost smiled. Gerald Fitch would have said the same thing. He looked at the car on the lift. Then back at Ray for what it's worth. People in this town have known, some of them. They just needed something to point at. The article gave them something to point at, Ray said. Yes. Hector straightened up. I'm going to call Earl Fletcher, man who ran against Hargrove in 2018. He's in Chattanooga now, but he still has documentation from the investigation into his business. He's willing to talk. That's Dempsey's conversation, Ray said. Not ours, Hector nodded. I know. I'll tell him to call her. He left. Ray went back to work. The emergency council meeting happened that night. Ray didn't attend. Dot called him after with a summary. A neighbor of hers had been there. Hargrove had made a statement. He'd called the Tennessean article politically motivated and factually irresponsible. He'd expressed confidence that a full review would exonerate him. He'd been calm, controlled, but 2 council members had asked questions he hadn't expected. One of them had specifically asked about the 1999 commissioner race and Warren Lyle. Hargrove had said he didn't know what that had to do with anything. The council member had said she'd found it interesting that Lyle's name had come up in 2 separate conversations she'd had that week. Hargrove had said the meeting was about the article, not about 25-year-old commissioner races. The meeting had adjourned without resolution. He's rattled, Dot said on the phone. He showed it. Just barely. But people who've watched him for 12 years noticed. Good, Ray said. He's going to make a move, Dot said. I don't know what it is, but he's the kind of man who doesn't absorb a hit and do nothing. I know, Ray said. He was ready for that. The move came Friday, not against Ray. Against Coach Birch, a letter from the district superintendent, delivered to Birch's school mailbox Friday morning, copied to the principal, informing her that her contract renewal, which was due in January, was under review due to concerns about professional conduct. No specifics, just the language of bureaucratic pressure weaponized. Birch called Ray at noon. He's going after my job, she said. Her voice was level. The level of someone who had expected something and was not surprised but was still angry. When did the letter arrive? Ray said. This morning. After the council meeting last night. She paused. He's quick. He's scared, Ray said. Patricia Owens needs to see that letter today. I already forwarded it. Good. Ray thought for a moment. Birch, you said you have 11 years of files stored off-site. Yes. Are they secure? They're with my sister in Knoxville. Physical copies. He can't touch them. Good. Ray looked at the garage ceiling. He's trying to isolate you. Make you feel like you're standing alone in this. I know what he's trying to do, Birch said. I've watched him do it to other people for 11 years. A pause. I'm not going anywhere, I know. Ray said, I'm going to make a call. He called Dempsey next. Told her about the letter. Dempsey was quiet for a moment. Then, the federal attorney in Nashville is coming to Greystone Falls Monday. I spoke to him Thursday night. This letter. Using a district superintendent to pressure a witness who has cooperated with a potential federal investigation, that's not nothing, Ray. That's obstruction territory. Can you establish she's a witness in an official investigation? As of this morning, Dempsey said there is an official preliminary inquiry, which means anyone with information relevant to that inquiry is a protected witness, Ray said. Does Hargrove know about the inquiry? He will by end of day, Dempsey said. That's how these things work. But by the time he knows, the letter about Birch is already on record. And on record it looks like what it is. After Ray hung up, he sat for a moment. He thought about the shape of what Hargrove was doing, the way a man who had operated without consequence for 12 years responded when consequences arrived. Not by stopping, by accelerating, by using every tool faster and harder. And the problem with that strategy, the fundamental problem, was that it created more evidence of the same pattern. Every move Hargrove made now was another document in a file that was getting thicker by the day. Garrett Wynn walked into Dempsey's office Monday morning. He came alone. He'd told his mother Sunday night. His mother had cried. Not because she was surprised, because she'd been waiting for this for a long time too, in the way that people who live close to power know the weight of it and know the day it comes down. He had a lawyer his mother had arranged. A woman from Asheville who had nothing to do with Greystone Falls and no connection to Hargrove. He sat across from Dempsey and the federal attorney and he talked for 2 hours. He talked about specific conversations, specific instructions, specific things Hargrove had said in specific rooms on specific dates that Garrett had been present for. He talked about 2018, about the investigation into Earl Fletcher's contracting business, and a conversation in which Hargrove had mentioned that a certain person at the licensing board owed him a favor. He talked about the approach he'd been given regarding Mia Calloway, the framing, the language, the objective. He did not editorialize. He did not explain his reasons for being there. He answered what was asked. At the end, the federal attorney said, "Mr. Wynn, I want to be clear with you about what comes next. Things you've said today, they will require you to say them again in a formal capacity. There will be consequences for your stepfather that will affect your family. Are you prepared for that?" Garrett looked at the table. For a long moment, then he looked up. "He told me," Garrett said slowly, "when I was 12 years old that the only thing that matters in life is how much power you have over what happens to you." He paused. "I believed him for a long time. I'm trying to stop believing him now." Federal attorney said nothing. Dempsey looked at her desk. Garrett said, "I'm prepared." Ray heard about it from Dempsey that afternoon. He was at the garage last hour of the day, cleaning up. The phone rang. Dempsey told him Garrett had come in. Statement had been given. It was now part of a formal record. Ray listened, said thank you. He hung up. He stood in the garage for a moment, looking at nothing particular. The radio was off today. He'd turned it off at some point and hadn't turned it back on. He thought about Garrett Wynn at 18, doing the one thing that was hardest to do, the thing that cost you the most and gave you nothing back immediately. Telling the truth when the truth was about the people you lived with. He thought about the distance between who Garrett had been in September and who he had been this morning in that office. Not a transformation, not a movie moment, just a decision, a hard one, made in the direction of something better. Ray understood that. He understood it in his bones. That evening he picked up Mia from practice. She got in the truck. He pulled out of the lot. "Coach Birch told us today," Mia said. "About the letter. About her files. What did she say?" "She said she'd been at the school for 11 years and she wasn't leaving because someone sent a letter." Mia looked out the window. "She said sometimes staying is the bravest thing. She was looking at me when she said it." A pause. "I think she meant it two ways." "She probably did," Ray said. They drove. The fall trees on either side of the road had gone full color now, red and gold. The particular Tennessee fall that made you understand why people had written songs about coming home to this place. "Daddy," Mia said, Garrett made a statement today." To Dempsey, Ray glanced at her. "You knew that was going to happen?" "I thought it might." She watched the trees go past. "I don't think he's a bad person. I think he was in a bad situation for a long time and didn't know there was a way out." She paused. "That's not me forgiving him for what he did. That's just me understanding it." "There's a difference," Ray said. "Yeah," she said. "I know." They drove the rest of the way in the easy quiet that had become, over the past weeks, the texture of their life in Greystone Falls. The quiet of two people who didn't need to fill every space and had stopped apologizing for that. Ray pulled onto Maple Drive. He pulled in front of the house and put the truck in park. Neither of them got out immediately. "Are we going to be okay?" Mia asked. Simple, direct. The way she asked everything. Ray looked at the house, the old wood porch, the light on inside. Mia had set a lamp on a timer, a habit she'd developed in the first week, so there was always light when they came home. "Yeah," he said. "We're going to be okay, you sure?" He thought about the photograph, Gerald's box, Birch's files, Dempsey's federal attorney, Ghost's handshake and the settlement of 22 years, Dot's 31 years of breakfasts and one decision to stop waiting, a council chamber where someone had said Warren Lyle's name out loud and watched Hargrove's composure crack just slightly. Thought about an 18-year-old boy walking into a sheriff's office alone and telling the truth because someone had reminded him that choosing was possible. "Yeah," he said. "I'm sure." Mia nodded. Got out of the truck. Ray sat another moment. He reached to the center console, opened it, took out the photograph, not the original, the copy he kept with him. He looked at it. The gathering in 1999. The man at the edge of the frame. He put it back, closed the console. Some things you carried for a long time before you understood what they were for. He got out of the truck, went up the porch steps. The light from inside made the window warm. Inside, Mia was already in the kitchen. He heard the refrigerator open, heard her moving around. Sound of the house being lived in. He hung up his jacket, washed his hands at the kitchen sink. "I can make something," he said. "You can't cook," Mia said, already pulling things out. "I can cook some things. Name one." He thought about it. "Eggs. Eggs are not a meal." "Daddy?" Eggs are absolutely a meal. She looked at him over her shoulder. The look that had her mother in it and her own particular self in it simultaneously. The look that made him understand every time exactly how lucky he was. Sit down, she said. I'll make pasta. He sat down. The kitchen was warm. The lamp in the front room put its light through the doorway. Outside, Tennessee night was doing what it did, quiet and deep and full of trees, and the specific weight of a place that had been here long before any of these people and would be here long after. Ray put his hands flat on the table. He looked at them the way he sometimes did, not examining, just acknowledging. The ring, the grease that never fully washed out, the scar on the thumb from 2007, he used to look at his hands and see the record of what he'd done, the history carved into them. Tonight he looked at them and saw something else, tools. Still working, still useful, still here. That was enough. That was more than enough. Hands that had done things he was not proud of, and things he was, and were still doing things, still working, still building, still here. Linda, we stayed. He thought it simply plainly. We found the place and we stayed. Maya put the pasta on the stove. The water came to a boil. The steam rose. The kitchen smelled like garlic and salt and something ordinary and good. Ray sat at the table and let himself be where he was, not anywhere else. Not in 1999 or 2002 or any of the years that had bent and broken and remade him. Not thinking forward into what Hargrove would do or what the federal attorney would find or how it would end here. Kitchen. His daughter at the stove. The November dark outside. The lamp in the front room. The ring. This was the thing he had been trying to build for 3 years since Linda died. This small, specific, ordinary thing. He had it. He was going to keep it. 6 weeks later, on a Thursday afternoon in late November, Mia Calloway stood on the gymnasium floor of Greystone Falls High School. Coach Birch, whose contract review had been quietly dropped following the commencement of a federal preliminary inquiry into the conduct of County Councilman Bo Hargrove, read the names of the new squad members. Maya's name was on the list. She didn't whoop or jump. She stood straight and nodded and said, "Thank you to Coach Birch," and that was all. Birch looked at her and said, "You earned it." That was the whole of it. Bo Hargrove resigned from the county council on the first Monday of December, citing health reasons. No one in Greystone Falls was surprised. No one who mattered was satisfied by the language of it. The federal inquiry was ongoing. Its findings were not public yet. These things took time, but Warren Lyle, who had lost a county commissioner race 25 years ago and moved to Chattanooga and built a business and mostly stopped thinking about Greystone Falls. Warren Lyle received a call in early September from a federal attorney. He answered it. He talked for 3 hours, and Earl Fletcher, who had lost a contracting business in 2018 and moved to Chattanooga because it seemed like people who told the truth in Greystone Falls ended up in Chattanooga eventually. Earl Fletcher got the same call. He answered it too. Ray heard about the Hargrove resignation from at 6:30 on a Monday morning. She told him while pouring his coffee. He nodded. She set the pot down. Gerald would have wanted to see it, she said. Matter of fact. Not grief in it. Just truth. Yeah, Ray said. He would have ordered a piece of pie and sat there quietly pleased with himself, she said. He was like that. The quiet, pleased kind. Sounds like a good man, Ray said. He was, Dot said. So are you. In your particular way. She went back to the counter. Refilled the regulars. Came back this summer, she said. Are you going to be here in the summer? Ray looked up at her. She was looking at him steadily. Behind the glasses, behind the 31 years of breakfasts, something in the question that was about more than summer. Yeah, he said. We'll be here in the summer. She nodded. That was all. She went back to work. Ray drank his coffee. Outside on Main Street, Greystone Falls was waking up. The hardware store opening. A delivery truck at the pharmacy. 2 people walking a dog on the sidewalk. The dog investigating the same patch of ground it investigated every morning because some things were worth investigating every day. The flags between the street lamps moved in the cold air. The water tower looked down on all of it with its painted hawk. Ray finished his coffee. Left a fair tip, which was what he always left. Not more, not less, just fair, which was the thing he tried to be about most things now. He walked the 2 blocks to Birch Street. He opened the garage. Turned on the radio. Cash was on. I walked the line. He thought, yes, that's the idea. He rolled up his sleeves, picked up a wrench, got to work.